Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone, and it's a great pleasure to see so many people joining us live, and inshallah other people will be reviewing this recording later on. So this is actually the introductory portion to our course, reading التسهيل لعلوم التنزيل of Imam Ibn Juzayy al-Kalbi al-Gharnati. And although it is introductory, for those students who have been following along as we've been progressing through the text, you will know that before covering these introductory chapters, we have been reading a good part of the Tafsir itself, from the Fatiha through Surah Al-Baqarah, Al Imran, and to the end of An-Nisa. So that's module 1 of our course. And for several reasons, I decided to postpone covering the introductions to after covering a part of the Tafsir, mainly because I thought it would be helpful to get a bit of a hands-on experience for myself in order to comment upon his introductory material. So at the beginning of his work, Imam Ibn Juzayy lays out two main introductory sections. And what we're going to do over the next few sessions, and I don't know exactly how many at this point, is cover the first introduction, which consists of 12 abwab. And these introductions take us in the beginning through an introduction to his own book and his method in laying things out there. And that gives us some sense of his usul, or the principles in which he operates and in which he is understanding tafsir and applying the tafsir. And it gives us also a broader look onto some of the important usul al-tafsir, or indeed ulum al-Quran. So I'm going to say a few things about some of these general concepts. And in the beginning also, we can see here the cover that I'm sharing with you from the edition that we're consulting. Of course, if you're able to get hold of a physical copy, that would be great. At-Tasheel Ulum al-Tanzeel, this is the Dar al-Tayba edition, Dar al-Tayba al-Khadra, which is a recent edition. It is, we have found also through our experience to be the most accurate of the editions out there. And it has some footnotes by Sheikh Abdurrahman al-Barrak. Those are footnotes which are coming at especially some theological issues, some criticism of some of the Ash'ari positions expressed by Ibn Juzayy rahmatullah alayh, sometimes critique of certain Sufi concepts. But actually the footnotes can be fairly interesting to see some back and forth, or at least some response and critique that has been directed towards those words. And we wouldn't necessarily side with the footnote over the main text, but that's a matter of personal discretion. Right. Now, coming to the introductions, we have here, and I should say also that it's perfectly fine if you have other editions, because one of the main purposes of reading a text with a teacher is to correct the edition that you have. So there's no need to splash out on this Fakhir edition, as I like to call it, but it's perfectly fine to have any print edition. Print editions are ideal for making some of your notes. You might make other notes in other formats. That's perfectly fine. We're also going to be benefiting from the audio reading, which has been done by a scholar called Sheikh Amr al-Busati. Hafidhahullah. He's recording a number of tafsirs as audiobooks. So we'll make use of that as a way of helping us to get through the text in a good prompt fashion, and to get clarity on the text itself. Now, you may well be aware, I hope you're aware, that one of the main purposes for me in undertaking the study of this text is that I'm simultaneously working on the revised edition of the translation. It has not yet been published. There's a draft translation, which you can see here, done by Aisha Bewley, who's well known for a number of translations that she's published, both in the fields of tafsir and other fields. And this is a draft that has been done, and it needs to be looked at before the book can be published. So we're looking at it in terms, first and foremost, of accuracy, and secondly, in terms of accessibility and making the book ready for the general purpose and general audience, which a book like this, ought to be made suitable for, right? So people are going to be coming to this book not to study the intricacies of the science of tafsir according to one particular mufassir, but for the most part, they're coming wanting to know about the meanings of the Book of Allah. And so Ibn Juzayy is doing that for them, and we are doing the khidmah to his book by making it accessible in English. So we have to have this mentality of how we word things and how we structure things, and that is a process that we have been applying so far in the main body of the tafsir. Now we are looking at the sections which are introductory, and you may even have seen a version of this introduction in English, because it has been at some point made available as a PDF. So that is before, of course, I've looked at it or made any comments on it. And in fact, as you're with me now, I am looking at this for the first time and comparing it to the Arabic for the first time. So throughout this whole process, you will be working with me or watching me at work and raising any questions that you have, any suggestions that you have, feel free. We have our chat box within our live sessions, and we have the group, discussion group that we can use outside of those sessions, inshallah. So what else do I need to say as an introductory thing? Yeah, just to understand that as we're covering these muqaddimat are in usul al-tafsir and ulum al-Quran, I want you to just have the right level of expectation. I'm not here intending to go into full depth about all the issues that are addressed in these introductions. There are, I'm sure, more detailed and better shuruh out there. A number of scholars have explained these introductions in Arabic and in other languages, so feel free to benefit from those. Our purpose, as you will see, is to assess the translation, and at the same time, there's a number of things that I'm sure I'll want to draw attention to and to highlight and to clarify according to need. Also, I want you to understand that usul al-tafsir is, in some sense, it is the, sometimes you look at it in an individual level. So we look at the tafsir of al-Tabari, the tafsir of al-Qurtubi, the tafsir of al-Razi, al-Zamakhshari, al-Baydawi, Ibn Juzayy, al-Alusi, Ibn Ashur. Take any mufassir and say, what are the usul that he, or indeed she, was operating under, right? So oftentimes we do think about usul in that way. But really, if usul are to be useful, it has to be something that is generalized as something which is shared, right? So even though it is possible for there to be multiple approaches in tafsir, there should be central questions which are identified, like we have in usul al-fiqh. So books of usul al-fiqh will cover the same chapters, same issues, which may indeed be debated, but I'm going to stop allowing participants to unmute themselves. The issues may be debated, but there is common ground in terms of the points that are to be considered, right? Usul al-tafsir is not quite at the same level of development, right? So I'm going to give you a brief glance into my PhD thesis, which is about usul al-tafsir, and more specifically about tafsir al-Quran bil-Quran. And in that, in the introduction, I have talked about developments in the Muslim world concerning usul al-tafsir, and how you have a number of scholars who make points like this, that although usul al-tafsir is a thing, it does exist, at the same time, it is in pressing need of sustained efforts to clarify its aspects, define it, and develop it, right? Given the importance of it. Why is it important? Because usul al-tafsir should be the basis on which we know how to go about doing tafsir. And here we're assuming that tafsir is a need which will continue to exist as long as people are living and and being Muslim, right? And I, of course, am very much upon that assumption. Lisan al-hal, like if you look at the sort of situation of tafsir these days, you might doubt that the Muslim ummah really believes this, right, in terms of what it invests in the field of tafsir and its usul. But there are efforts. There are efforts to try to improve the situation and to create those usul, because we need them in order to do tafsir and also in order to analyze and assess and evaluate and compare tafsirs, and to know what is a good proposal and suggestion and opinion, and what is a faulty one, and why is this good and why is that one faulty. So just maybe other couple of quotes from this, that there's a need for a qanun. This has been mentioned by earlier scholars like At-Tufi. In the early 20th century, Hamiduddin al-Farahi has, and he's not the only one, has compared it with the situation of usul al-fiqh, as I did. And often it's a case of why is usul al-fiqh so developed and usul al-tafsir is scattered. And that's all I want to say. It's not that we don't have the usul. It's not that it's all random. It's just that it is somewhat individualistic in the way we talk about it. And secondly, the materials are there in our tradition, but they just haven't been sort of gathered, consolidated, and made systematic, right? So to some extent, we're interested in what our reading of Ibn Juzayy can do to help improve our perception of what usul al-tafsir is and how it works. And more broadly, a lot of the things that he's going to talk about are what we will class as ulum al-Quran, right? You could almost get that sense from the title, but I don't think that would be the right way to understand his title. At-Tasheel li ulum al-Tanzil, someone might think, well, ulum al-Tanzil equals ulum al-Quran, is Quranic sciences, like we have in a book like Al-Itqan fi ulum al-Quran. We have 80 chapters in that book, or 80 anwa, types of Quranic sciences, gathered from earlier works from all over the place, right? So that is not what he means by ulum al-tanzil. He means the knowledge contained in the Quran, right? So ilm al-Quran, it is the knowledge that the Quran gives us. However, the introductions do cover certain things which are in ulum al-Quran, such as the Makki versus the Madani and so on. And those things, ulum al-Quran is a broader concept than usul al-tafsir. Right? So what we're most interested in at this point in time is the ulum al-Quran which actually have a bearing on interpretation, right? So there's a subset of ulum al-Quran which are also pertinent to interpretation. So we have ulum al-Quran more broadly, and then usul al-tafsir within that. Or in other words, we have various ulum which can be directed towards the purpose of interpretation. But that's, a subject which we can elaborate on at a later stage. So inshallah, we can start our reading of the text by listening to Sheikh Amr and scanning through the translation, and I will pick out on things that seem worthy of elaboration at this point.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال عبيد الله تعالى وخديم القرآن العظيم محمد المدعو أبا القاسم بن أحمد بن محمد بن جزي عفى الله عنه وغفر له بمنه وفضله. الحمد لله العزيز الوهاب مالك الملوك ورب الأرباب، هو الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب هدى وذكرى لأولي الألباب، وأودعه من العلوم النافعة والبراهين القاطعة والأنوار الساطعة غاية الحكمة وفصل الخطاب، وخصه من الخصائص العلية واللطائف الخفية والدلائل الجلية والأسرار الربانية العجاب بكل عجب عجاب، وجعله في الطبقة العليا من البيان حتى أعجز الإنس والجان، واعترف زعماء أرباب اللسان بما تضمنه من الفصاحة والبراعة والبلاغة والإعراب والإغراب.
So what we can see here is an introduction which is typical of books of this kind. We have got some general praise of Allah, and subsequently we're going to see, of course, the Salat ala Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But here he's also indicating some of the key themes that he wants to draw attention to, and that I want to draw our attention to as well. So in the beginning, of course, centrality of the Quran. centrality of the Quran as a source of ilm, right? And that's something that we're going to see him using the expression later on. فَإِنَّ عِلْمَ الْقُرْآنِ الْعَظِيمِ كَذَا وَكَذَا, right? He's going to use that expression. That the Quran is carrying ilm, and so we are studying the ilm of the Quran. And that's interesting because a lot of times we're talking just about a tafsir. So we're talking about tafsir al-Quran, and we're talking about ilm al-tafsir, right? But I want us to conceptualize first that we have the Quran itself, and the Quran is ilm and a container of ilm, and we're trying to get the ilm of the Quran itself, right? So tafsir is a way of describing that, or tafsir is the name of the particular science that is most pertinent to that. Tafsir is a science that is concerned with the meanings of the Quran. But to limit ourselves to just talking about tafsir and to sort of forget that we have a Quran there, right? So what we're doing in this course is we are studying a work of tafsir. We're studying the tafsir of Ibn Juzayy. But beyond that, our higher goal is to study the tafsir of the Quran, right? To study the field of tafsir. And above that, our higher goal is to study the Quran itself, right? So it might seem like a small detail, but it is important to conceptualize it in this way. Now, first he gives praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Aziz Al-Wahhab, okay, Malik Al-Muluk. So Malik, by the way, doesn't mean king. So if we say Malik Al-Muluk, it's different from Malik Al-Muluk, right? Small difference, but Malik is owner. It could be that he intended to write Malik Al-Muluk, but he's written Malik Al-Muluk, right? وَرَبِّ الْأَرْبَابِ هُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ عَلَى عَبْدِهِ الْكِتَابِ هُدًى وَذِكْرًا لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Okay. Then he says وَأَوْدَعَهُ مِنَ الْعُلُومِ النَّافِعَةِ. Okay, then so the maf'ul is غاية الحكمة وفصل الخطاب. Right, he placed the furthest limit of wisdom, decisive discourse. But then why is the sentence then broken in this way? Useful sciences and conclusive proofs in it. I mean, the meaning is basically fine, but there's an issue about the sentence structure, which I probably want to improve. Not all edits I will do necessarily live, because sometimes it needs a bit of thought and a bit of, and sometimes it doesn't seem worth it to spend our time on it. Where it's worth it, then I will do it before your eyes, inshallah. وخصه من الخصائص العلية. Yes, and as someone's pointing out, Al-Anwar al-Salti'a is also not mentioned here in the translation. وخصه من الخصائص العلية. Okay, وخصه بكل عجب عجاب. So again, the next part that connects to the word خصه is here, right? He placed it, or he singled out the most astonishing of every wonder. Okay, عجب عجاب, of exalted qualities, concealed subtleties, clear indications, and divine secrets for it. I'm not sure the for it makes sense here. Oh, he singled out for it. Okay, and that's okay. That's okay. Right, he placed it at the highest level of elucidation. Min al-bayan. Okay, so the Quran itself is a work of bayan, right? So bayan here can mean clarity, but bayan can also mean communication, right? And those two things kind of go hand in hand. So the Quran is communicating meanings. And that's important because, again, when we're doing tafsir, as in we're dealing with tafsir and we're talking about tafsir, it's almost like we come at it from the assumption that the Quran is somehow a closed text or an obscure text, and we need tafsir in order to clarify it, right? And while that has truth to it, no doubt, we should first of all recognize the Quran is bayan, it is actually communicating. And then tafsir is only needed because we have a kind of gap in our own readiness to receive that bayan and to recognize it and to grasp it. So Whereas people who were closer to the revelation, the Sahaba, and their level of language was far superior, and their grasp of the context in which the Quran was coming was, unmatched and unmatchable. They still needed some types of extra bayan from the Prophet ﷺ. But for the most part, the Quran would have been speaking directly to them without the need for tafsir. But as more and more gaps started to exist and people are more distant from the Quran in various ways, there's more need to ask questions in order to get closer to the meaning. Okay, so that's what tafsir is. So we should not discount in the first place that it is, of course, the Quran is bayan. Hatta a'jaz al-ins, okay, we've already read this. So that it is impossible for men and jinn to imitate. Okay, of course, we're losing all the nice rhyming that is in this introduction, but such is life. Scholars who are masters of language recognize the eloquence, skill, okay, composition, syntax, and abundant marvels it contains. Okay, so in something like this, you want the introduction actually to flow nicely and to be very readable and powerful as well. You're going to lose something, I guess, but after checking for accuracy, you want it to be appealing, right? Especially this is the first thing that people are going to read. So scholars, زعماء أرباب اللسان واعترف زعماء أرباب اللسان. So scholars who are masters, I don't think that scholars is necessarily the issue here, because in the first place, the ones who recognized this were Quraysh, and they were the masters of the language. But the word scholars doesn't really fit that context very well, right? But they were the masters of language, the leading masters. And arbabul lisan doesn't mean masters, really. Arbabul lisan is the possessors of the language, the speakers. So zu'ama is the word that means masters. So scholars who are masters, I would not, that's doubling up the point, if you see what I mean. What else do we need to say here? Okay, so this is pointing to the fact that there is something called i'jaz al-Quran, and it's pointing to the centrality of language in recognizing and appreciating that i'jaz. And this is where the word balagha, chimes with that point, that there is a need to study balagha in particular, language in general, in order to recognize the i'jaz, and of course for other purposes, right? To draw out the meanings and to appreciate the levels of meaning in the Quran.
ويسر حفظه في الصدور وضمن حفظه من التبديل والتغيير فلم يتغير ولا يتغير على طول الدهور وتوالي الأحقاب وجعله قولا فصلا وحكما عدلا وآية بادية ومعجزة باقية يشاهدها من شهد الوحي ومن غاب وتقوم بها الحجة للمؤمن الأواب والحجة على الكافر المرتاب.
Okay, so a number of things are being touched on here. So he's mentioning how it has been made easy for people to memorize, right? So you can refer here to وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ. Okay, so, and then he's mentioned that Allah Azza wa Jal has, what's the translation here? Guaranteed his protection from being exchanged or altered. And those two things are connected, of course, right, in an obvious way. And even before that stage, he made its recitation smooth and easy and appealing and beautiful, and his words delightful, so that it would become easy to memorize and people would want to memorize it, and in order to be able to recite it. And that has a result of preserving it and protecting it, and that has a result of preserving and protecting its contents, right? So this is what I would call the chain of purposes, right? That something is intended not necessarily in its own right, or not only in its own right, but also because it leads to other intended outcomes, right? So the most important thing is for the guidance of the Quran to reach people. So if you think about it, the beauty of the Quran is part of how that is going to happen. the beauty of the Quran, or the wonders of its wording and the perfection of its nazm and its structure, and the power of its words and its delivery, all of that also plays another important role. As well as delivering the message, it is part of supporting the message. So that's where he says, as well as being qawlan faslan wa hakaman adlan, okay, it's also ayah wa mu'jiza, and very importantly, mu'jizatan baqiyatan, right? So this is a miracle unlike other miracles. Most miracles, including those that happened in the hands of the final Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there are things which you had to be there, right, to witness it, and that would have its effect of convincing you, of removing any remaining doubts, and of being a proof upon you, right? So once you've witnessed it, you better submit to that messenger and that message, because you have no excuse. You have seen the clear proof in front of you, right? So there are certain types of miracles which came and went, and then the Quran is a different kind of a miracle that lasts and persists. So it is both the message and the miracle wrapped up in one. Right? Most of the time you have the message, and then a miracle or miracles which come to support that message and to prove the truth of that message. The Quran is both things at once, right, which makes it unique. So this is message, miracle, and also hujjah, right? So it's a proof for or against you, okay? An argument on behalf of the penitent believer and the proof against the doubting unbeliever, okay.
هذا الخلق بما شرع فيه من الأحكام وبين من الحلال والحرام وعلم من شرائع الإسلام وصرف من النواهي والأوامر والمواعظ والزواجر والبشارة بالثواب والنذارة بالعقاب وجعل أهل القرآن أهل الله وخاصته واصطفاهم من عباده وأورثهم الجنة وحسن المآب فسبحان المولى الكريم الذي خصنا بكتابه وشرفنا بخطابه فيا لها نعمة سابغة وحجة بالغة أوزعنا الله القيام بواجب شكرها وتوفية حقها ومعرفة قدرها وما توفيقي إلا بالله هو ربي لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وإليه متاب.
Okay, so the translators have made a choice here to switch to the present tense here, and I don't see much reason to do so. I understand why that you might want to say guides rather than guided, and that's finished, but there is there's a connection to the point being made. So by the fact that he has placed ahkam in it, he has guided people and provided guidance for people. He provided guidance, you could say it like that, because you have the concept of hidayah amma and hidayah khassa, right? So not everybody is guided in the hidayah khassa, right? Many people are astray, but everyone has been guided in the sense that guidance has been provided in the revelation, right? So I would change this back, the tense. He laid down in it and made clear the lawful and unlawful and taught the rights of Islam. Okay. وَصَرَّفَ مِنَ النَّوَاهِ وَالْأَوَامِرِ. Also it's mentioned prohibitions, commands, exhortations, restrictions, good news and warning. Okay. وَجَعَلَ أَهْلَ الْقُرْآنِ أَهْلَ اللَّهِ وَخَاصَّتَهُ. So ja'ala, I don't think we want to say regards. We want to say he made, right? The people of Quran, the people of Allah and his choicest friends. Okay. He singles them out. Okay, again, we have this tense issue. From among his slaves, and makes them inherit the garden, the best place. Returns to glory be to our generous master who singled us out with his book. Okay, khassana, singled us out, it's fine. And honored us with his address. What an abundant blessing and far-reaching proof. Okay. May Allah the Generous help us to undertake the duty of showing gratitude for it and fulfilling its right, recognizing its rank. My success is only by Allah. So this is, it sounds like he's winding up, but in fact he's just getting to the next part, which is the salat and salam and the mention of the role of the Prophet ﷺ. So just before that, what we have seen here is something about the status of Ahlul Quran and the value and the beauty of being inheritors of the Quran and teachers of the Quran. And we should not limit that to just the aspect of recitation, to memorize and to recite and to teach people to recite. But of course, teaching the meanings is integral to that. And more crucial than that in reality, right? If we had to choose, we don't have to choose at all, but I'm saying more important than the correct recitation of the Quran is to teach people to correctly live by the Quran. Hopefully that's not controversial. Some people seem to find it controversial or get uncomfortable when you say things like this. I don't know why. Because we're used to doing things in a certain way, and the priorities of our ummah are completely askew. That's why. Right, so status of the people of Quran and teaching Quran. And just before that, also I wanted to draw attention that the purpose of all these extractions that the Mufassirin are going to do, right? So Tafsir in the first place is understanding the words and locating those words in their context in order to understand them correctly. And then beyond that, it is also extracting the guidance, right, from the Quran, understanding the lessons, understanding the rulings, such as halal and haram, and all the other aspects that affect an individual or a community, right? من النواهي والأوامر والمواعظ والزواجر, right? So moral and ethical teachings as well as legal teachings, right? So all of that is the guidance of the Quran. So that is also the purpose of tafsir, right? If we just were to understand what Allah said and say, okay, I understand now, okay, it's not enough. It has to lead on to a next stage, which is understanding the implications of what we understood and then implementing what we understood.
وصلوات الله وسلامه وتحياته وبركاته وإكرامه على من دلنا على الله وبلغنا رسالة الله وجاءنا بالقرآن العظيم وبالآيات والذكر الحكيم وجاهد في الله حق الجهاد وبذل جهده في الحرص على نجاة العباد وعلم ونصح وبين وأوضح حتى قامت الحجة ولاحت المحجة وتبين الرشد من الغي وظهر طريق الحق والصواب وانقشعت ظلمات الشك والارتياب. ذلك سيدنا ومولانا محمد النبي الأمي القرشي الهاشمي المختار من لباب اللباب والمصطفى من أطهر الأنساب وأشرف الأحزاب الذي أيده الله بالمعجزات الظاهرة والآيات الباهرة والجنود القاهرة والضيوف الباترة العضاب وجمع له بين شرف الدنيا والآخرة.
Okay. Okay, so the paragraph breaking is a little bit different here in the translation. I think I will just adjust it to be the same as in the Arabic text. Although, that's open to different ways of breaking it up. Even, maybe just for ease of reading in English, we could consider just breaking that paragraph in two.
على قائد الغر المحجلين والوجوه الناظرة فهو أول من يشفع يوم الحساب وأول من يدخل الجنة ويقرع الباب فصلى الله عليه وعلى آله الطيبين وأصحابه الأكرمين خير أهل وأكرم أصحاب صلاة زاكية نامية لا يحصر مقدارها العد والحساب.
Now, I'm just taking a brief look at the translation here, and not really checking every last word and phrase. But of course here he's doing the convention, of course, of sending salat on the Prophet ﷺ at this point in the introduction, but he's also pointing to his role, his overall role as a prophet, okay, and all the things that he represents in our deen. But specifically, of course, within that is the importance of recognizing his role in terms of bayan and clarification of the Quran, right? So that's not elaborated here, but it is pointed to, okay? And for us to just note here that it is well understood by the scholars of Quran that the Sunnah, the practical and spoken example of the Prophet ﷺ, is the chief form of bayan of the Quran, in that the Quran was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, and he was charged with conveying it to people. So when he conveyed it to people, he has also conveyed the meaning. And he's done that directly and indirectly. So in the sense that all the things that he said and did in his life, by gathering them, we can help have the context in which to understand things in the Quran. And those ahadith, the reports which represent the Sunnah and present it and convey it, they can become evidence for different opinions in tafsir, right? But then there's also some specific ahadith of tafsir, where the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned an ayah and mentioned its meaning, or some Sahaba came and asked about the meaning of a certain ayah and they got an answer about it. Or sometimes the Prophet ﷺ might have been saying something and then he used an ayah as an evidence or to support what he is saying, and from that we can infer something about its meaning and what he is pointing to in its meaning. There are various different types of hadith, and this is something which can be looked at in its own right. In addition to that, there are different types of bayan, in the sense that sometimes the hadith is coming to do takhsis or do taqyid, or like to provide some kind of specification or limitation to what was in the Quran mentioned in general terms or universal terms, or to put a restriction or a qualification or a condition on something that was mentioned in absolute terms in the Quran, right? So there are numerous things like this, right? Or just to clarify the meaning of something which is somehow unclear, right, upon first reading. So these are various types of prophetic bayan, and that is important to study in terms of methods of understanding the Quran. This is essential to usul al-tafsir. Okay, so then he comes on to talk about the sciences of tafsir.
إلى أدنى وصفها ألسنة البلغاء ولا أقلام الكتاب. أما بعد فإن علم القرآن العظيم هو أرفع العلوم قدرا وأجلها خطرا وأعظمها أجرا وأشرفها ذكرا، وإن الله أنعم علي بأن شغلني بخدمة القرآن وتعلمه وتعليمه، وشغفني بتفهم معانيه وتحصيل علومه، فاطلعت على ما صنفه العلماء رضي الله عنهم في تفسير القرآن من التصانيف المختلفة الأوصاف المتباينة الأصناف.
Now, just a small point is that I noticed that Al-Azim before they translated as the vast Quran, and here they've said tremendous Quran. So a word like this, which is just being used descriptively, it's not important to me that there be absolute consistency in that, okay, because there could be different contexts in which the word Azim is being used. But here, as a descriptive term for the Quran, why not just keep it the same? I don't see any reason to vary it. And I don't think vast Quran is a very good, tremendous Quran is fine, but there might be nicer words.
منهم من آثر الاختصار، ومنهم من طول حتى كثر الأسفار، ومنهم من تكلم في بعض فنون العلم دون بعض، ومنهم من اعتمد على نقل أقوال الناس، ومنهم من عول على النظر والتحقيق والتدقيق، وكل واحد سلك طريق النحاة وذهب مذهبا ارتضاه، وكل وعد الله الحسنى، فرغبت في سلوك طريقهم والانخراط في سلك فريقهم، وصنفت هذا الكتاب في تفسير القرآن العظيم وسائر ما يتعلق به من العلوم، وسلكت به مسلكا نافعا إذ جعلته وجيزا جامعا، قصدت به 4 مقاصد تتضمن 4 فوائد.
Okay, so he said quite a lot here in a few words, which is not ironic at all, because that's his skill actually in writing a mukhtasar. The tafsir of Ibn Juzayy is a tafsir which is considered a mukhtasar, although he is describing it here as more like a not too mukhtasar, but just baina bain, right? So I've hit the golden mean. Okay, some mufassirin composed several tafsirs, right? I'm not aware that applies to Ibn Juzayy, but some of them like Al-Wahidi, for example, has got Al-Wajiz and then Al-Wasit and Al-Basit, right? Basit being like expansive. So you can see that they are applying the different methods to elaborate or to summarize as much as possible, right? And to select only one opinion, for example, or just the shortest way to express that opinion, right? So Ibn Juzay's tafsir does look like a mukhtasar, but he fairly is saying that you know, there are briefer tafsirs than his, and he's actually added some things in there that might not be expected in a mukhtasar, right? Which he's going to explain in due course, right? So he's explaining the different types of composition in the field of tafsir. So some have preferred summarization. This is fine as a translation, but I just want to point out that al-ikhtisar could refer to just you know, being brief, or it could refer to actually summarizing things from earlier, right? And those things kind of go hand in hand, but I'm just saying to understand that it's not necessarily that man athar al-ikhtisar means the person has just done summary of earlier mufassirin. No, it just means they wanted to keep things very brief, okay? And then, okay, on the other hand, حتى كثر الأسفار, some who go to great lengths. I would not say go to great lengths is the expression here for tawwala, right? It just means wrote at length until they increase greatly the number of books. Al-asfar here could be equivalent to saying like volumes, multiple volumes and pages, right? ومنهم من اعتمد على نقل أقوال الناس. Okay, so before that, تكلم في بعض فنون العلم دون بعض. There are those who speak about one type of science. So I'm highlighting a lot here. I have to choose a different color. Al-ilm here, probably he means min fununi ilm al-tafsir, right? So one aspect of tafsir they focused on over others. So I wouldn't be too literal here in saying بعض فنون العلم دون بعض. One type of science rather than any other. Like that's a literal way of translating it. But it just means they focused on particular aspects of the science, right? I would put it like that. More so than others, right? ومنهم من اعتمد على نقل أقوال الناس. There are those who depend on transmitting the sayings of people. You know, people is like الناس here. It's not like, oh, you went out in the street and said, what do you think that the ayah means? You know, oh, I'll just write this down. Hold on. So it's not people in this very broad sense, but we have to understand when he says نقل أقوال الناس, he means أقوال العلماء and, you know, Sahaba and Tabi'een and أتباع Tabi'een and so on. ومنهم من عول على النظر والتحقيق والتدقيق. There are those who depend on insight, verification, and exactness. We'd probably want a word here like critical, analytical. I mean, I'm going to deal with the translation as such later, but what he's getting at is there are those who actually engaged in critique and analysis, rather than verification is okay as a word that gets towards this point, but it's not so much. If we said exactness, does it imply that other ones were not engaged in exactness? What he means is that tadqiq as in investigating matters that have been discussed, rather than just naqli aqwal al-nas, rather than just telling us what was said. It is about looking into that, analyzing, weighing them up, investigating the proofs behind different statements, right? Each travels the path he does. Okay, so here, this is like what I'm pointing to about the idea of individualistic usul, right? But more so, he's talking here about authorial practices, right? So each has made certain choices as an author about how to write the tafsir. And Ibn Juzayy is a participant in tradition, right? So he's coming in and saying, I appreciate all these things that they've done, and I've got my way that I want to add to this tradition, okay? فَرَغِبْتُ, I think it should be رَغِبْتُ rather than رَغَبْتُ, as we heard. Okay. To travel on their path and to join the development. Okay. Of course, وَكُلُّ مَعَدَ اللَّهُ الْحُسْنَى is a Quranic expression. But there's no need necessarily to point that out. I desire to travel on their path and to join the development of their group. I mean, this is very, very awkward sounding, isn't it? وَالْإِنْخِرَاطِ فِي سِلْكِ فَرِيقِهِمْ. It's like to be another pearl on that string of greatness, right? So the development of their group is very... So I composed this book in commentary on the tremendous Quran. Again, it's a choice there. And every science that is connected to it. في تفسير القرآن العظيم والسائر ما يتعلق به من العلوم. So it's like he's distinguishing here between tafsir per se and things which are like tafsir or adjacent sciences to tafsir. Bearing in mind that he doesn't actually elaborate on that many things outside of tafsir in this work, right? But he points to some things and that are not necessarily tafsir, like some spiritual insights and so on, and he talks about that in his introduction as well. وَسَلَكْتُ بِهِ مَسْلَكًا نَافِعًا. I've adopted a useful course, okay, since I have made it both comprehensive, rather than a course, you might say, approach. Let's just do that now. Since I have made it both comprehensive and concise, right? وَجِيزًا جَامِعًا. Is it possible? At least this is the claim, right? Comprehensive and concise. Of course, Ibn Juzayy actually is very skilled in the art of ikhtisar. And so that's why his tafsir is actually really appreciated. But of course, nothing can be truly comprehensive and concise. There has to be some balance struck, right? So that's his call as to how to strike that balance. By which I intend 4 things which contain 4 benefits. Right. So Yunus is asking me, is that min bayaniya? And I discovered what commentary. Let's see. I see. So he says here, فطلعت على ما صنفه العلماء في تفسير القرآن من التصانيف. Yes. So the min is bayaniya. So I discovered what commentary the scholars had compiled of compositions. I mean, it's just a very awkward sentence in English, isn't it? So now we've looked at it again. We're going to have to make it yellow, right? I discovered what commentary the scholars had compiled of compositions of different descriptions in different classes. So with a bit of improvement, that translation is fine. Right. So we only have a little bit of time left, but I think we can definitely push on to get to the end of this first introduction, inshallah.
الفائدة الأولى: جمع كثير من العلم في كتاب صغير الحجم تسهيلا على الطالبين وتقريبا على الراغبين، فلقد احتوى هذا الكتاب على ما تضمنته الدواوين الطويلة من العلم، ولكن بعد تلخيصها وتمحيصها وتنقيح فصولها وحذف حشوها وفضولها، ولقد أودعته من كل فن من فنون علوم القرآن اللباب المرغوب فيه دون القشر المرغوب عنه من غير إفراط ولا تفريط، ثم إني عزمت على إيجاز العبارة وإفراط الاختصار وترك التطويل والتكرار.
Okay, so we're going to notice a few things about translation here. Now, in general, in this kind of, there's a flowery way of speaking Arabic in which you use almost rhyming expressions, or you use synonyms to just strengthen the meaning of what you've just said. Okay, and that works very well in Arabic and can sound a little bit forced in English. Right? So in this kind of situation, you have to make a decision. Is he saying here 2 different things when he says تسهيلا على الطالبين وتقريبا على الراغبين? Is that 2 different things, or is that the same thing? Now, الطالبين, does it actually mean students? or does it mean seekers? I'll tell you, it means seekers. Okay, but a talib ilm is a seeker of knowledge, right? There's no such thing as a student of knowledge, as many of you students of knowledge like to talk about, right? No such thing. A talib ilm is a seeker of knowledge, aka student, right? Student of knowledge is like saying eater of food. MashaAllah, you eat food. That's a really amazing thing to eat, right? So talib could be a talib of anything. طالب الدنيا وطالب الآخرة, right? So تسهيلا على الطالبين وتقريبا على الراغبين. تسهيل and تقريب mean the same thing. طالبين and راغبين mean the same thing. Yes, you can find the nuance between them, but the basic intent is synonyms. So do we need to say to make things easier for students and to bring things nearer for the eager? No. That becomes just, following the Arabic wording for its own sake and making it more clunky and more unwieldy for English readers, right? This book encompasses that which lengthy collections of knowledge contain. And as I said to you before, min al-ilmi, it could just be knowledge, but I think he means here of tafsir, right? So al-ilm meaning ilm tafsir. But after condensing, clarifying, talkhis wa tamhis. So clarifying is not the meaning of tamhis. Okay, in some sense it could be, but it's like purifying. وتنقيح فصولها وحذف حشوها وفضولها. I don't think that by fusul he means sectional arrangements. I think he means its essential aspects, right? So clarifying what is essential to it and then cutting out everything else, omitting its filler material and its excess. Now in Arabic again, like حذف حشوها وفضولها, it sounds great, and partly because fudul has got this jinas with fusul and it rhymes and it just sounds great. But there, like now we've got this sentence in English which basically has hashu or fudul in it and omitting its filler material and its excess, right? To the extent they had to put a bracket in, right? So this should that can be made more concise. I have placed the desired quintessence of every one of the different sorts of science of Quran in it. وَلَقَدْ أَوْدَعْتُهُ مِنْ كُلِّ فَنٍّ اللُّبَابَ الْمَرْغُوبِ. The desired quintessence of every one of this. Okay, without either excess or neglect, rather than the avoidable trivialities. دون القشر المرغوب عنه. Okay, so obviously there's a metaphor here or a physical description in comparison with the core of the fruit and then the peel, which peel is healthy as well, but some fruits you can't eat the peel. Okay, so let's not use an apple, let's use, I don't know, okay, even a banana. Okay, so you're not going to eat the peel, so he wants to get rid of that. Either excess or neglect rather than the avoidable trivialities. Okay. Moreover, I resolved on succinctness of expression. And then when he says وَإِفْرَاطِ الْإِخْتِصَارِ, when you say exaggerated is a negative word. So he's not dispraising his own work by saying exaggerated concision, but it just means a high measure of concision as far as possible. وَتَرْكِ التَّطْوِيلِ وَالتَّكْرَارِ. Yeah, so in the main body of the text, it's not being as flowery as he is here. But this is the nature of these introductions. They speak like this, right? بعد تلخيصها وتمحيصها وتنقيح فصولها وحذف حشوها وفضولها. Don't try to reproduce that aspect of it in English, right? That's my argument anyway.
الفائدة الثانية ذكر نكت عجيبة وفوائد غريبة قلما توجد في كتاب لأنها من بنات صدري ونتائج فكري أو مما أخذته عن شيوخي رضي الله عنهم أو مما التقطته من مستظرفات النوادر الواقعة في غرائب الدفاتر.
Beautiful. Okay, and again, all the rhyming and everything is there. Okay. Now, Banatu Sadri, he's not, he's not talking about his concerns. He's talking about his own opinions, things that are original to him, right? So what he's going to do is mention wonderful points, amazing benefits. Ghariba, amazing is okay, but the point is the things you won't find elsewhere. Let's say rare or unusual. قلما توجد في كتاب, which are rarely found in books, because they are either not one of my concerns, no, the springs of my remembrance. What's that? نتائج فكري, springs, the results. Normally we say نتائج. Hold on. So they have got probably in their text dhikr, because we have got fikr, which seems much easier to understand. Okay, whereas springs of my remembrance would not be right. Or, so it's not and, it's or. A part of that which I took from my teachers. Why does it have to be a part of that? Or which I took, or from that which I took, which still is just too clunky. May Allah be pleased with it. Or from, or what I have received. التقطته means like I came across it and plucked it out. So not received. Excerpted, something like this, of rare elegances, مستظرفات النوادر, rare elegances. See, it's like nobody's going to understand this, and you can read that. Or from that which I received of rare elegances occurring in unusual manuscripts. Rare elegances, I don't think comes through, right? So we need to find a way to word this that's going to be understood. This is my point. The fruits of my remembrance. But we don't have dhikr, we have fikr here. So it could be that the other one has dhikr, but fikr is more obviously fitting to what he's saying here. Yeah, in their copy, but we're not translating their copy. We're translating according to what the best version of the text that we have got. Okay. Unless we're convinced that nata'ij dhikri, for example, is actually the better reading, then we can go with it. Okay, we can. Now, someone asked another question. So one shouldn't try to explain the metaphorical language in the Quran as metaphors in English. Yeah, but that's the Quran, right? So the Quran is maqsood bidhatihi. Okay, so trying to explain the metaphorical usage of Ibn Juzayy is not necessarily worth it. It might be worth it at times, and at other times it's not worth it. Like put a footnote and say he says lubab and qishr. Like if I feel that it will really add something to the understanding of the reader, then so be it. I'm not ruling it out, but I'm saying, is it worth spending time on and filling space with? Right? That's a decision that you have to make. I'm trying to be clear about what the purpose of this book and publication is. Right? Conclusions of my deliberation. Yeah, that's okay. Shall I put it in now? Would you like to see that? I'll leave it in pink though, just for further deliberation. Okay.
الفائدة الثالثة: إيضاح المشكلات إما بحل العقد المقفلات وإما بحسن العبارة ورفع الاحتمالات وبيان المجملات.
Okay. المجملات, right. إيضاح المشكلات, clarification of problems. So مشكلات as problems is is of course in many cases is the right word, but mushkil sometimes could be conceived in a different way, because if you say, we don't really want to say problems in the Quran or problematic things in the Quran, but we want to say things which may be difficult to understand. They present a difficulty, right? Now, وَإِمَّا بِحَلِّ الْعُقَدِ الْمُقْفَلَاتِ, so not وَإِمَّا, either by resolving tightly locked knotty problems, fine, or by good expression, or ورفع الاحتمالات وبين المجملات. So he's giving you two things here, right? Two things which so you're asking, could mushkilat refer to mutashabihat? To be honest, I think that he's talking about mushkilat not so much in the Quran, but in the works of tafsir that he is, he's dealing with some ibarat and he's improving the way that things have been worded and expressed, right? It's not that strange. You do have a genre which is called mushkil al-Quran. It's not a big deal to say things are mushkil in the Quran, right? It's just you should translate that in a good way. But إيضاح المشكلات, but then he says حل العقد المقفلات بحسن العبارة ورفع الاحتمالات وبين المجملات. This could refer to ibarat in the Quran, that what he's doing is clarifying which of the various possibilities within it is the intended meaning. So رفع الاحتمالات, narrowing down and specifying the intended meaning among various possibilities. And likewise, things which are unclear, this is a general term for ijmal, making them clear, right? So that could refer to the ibarat of the Quran, or it could refer to the works of tafsir. The reason why I'm going with it could be the works of tafsir is because بحسن العبارة, he wouldn't be saying that he is doing husn al-ibara compared to the Quran, right? But he could be saying he's doing husn al-ibara compared to other tafasir. You're asking me the best one-word translation for what he does with mushkilat. Again, if we're talking about the tafsirs, that'd be one thing, like difficult wording. Yeah, difficult wording, something like that. Technicalities. No, I wouldn't say mushkilat means technicalities. Complex issues. Yes, it can be. Ambiguous. Ambiguous would be a subcategory within ishkal, you could say, or a subcategory within ijmal, ambiguities. Inshallah, I will direct you to the parts of my thesis where I refer to mushkil al-Quran and also the concepts of ijmal and bayan, and I can further clarify that. Okay, but I don't want to say clarification of problems. I would say difficult expressions. Or difficult passages. But بحل العقد المقفلات, then it could be like the substance of the issue needs clarification, or just that I give a wording which makes the matter clearer than how other people have put it. Let's say difficult issues, either by resolving tightly locked knotty problems. I mean, that's like maybe over literal. I mean, we need to just maybe make that a little bit easier to grasp in English. Or by a good expression, not or the elimination, which eliminates. Here, because ihtimalat here can be understood quite clearly as ambiguity, right? Because multiple possibilities, ihtimalat, we call that in English ambiguity. And the explanation of general concepts. Mujmalat is not here general concepts, but ijmal is ma la yattadihu ma'nahu, right? That's what the meaning of ijmal, mujmal. Or by providing a good expression which eliminates ambiguity and explains, okay. explains the unclear. Just leave it at that. Okay. Right, let's see. You're giving me a bunch of... this is good. This is good. Possible contentions. Under what? احتمالات? Or something else. Resolving technical nocti problems. Yes, it does sound really strange. I agree. Why rafa and bayan in the last sentence marfu'? Oh, okay. Okay, good point. Good point. So then it would be إيضاح المشكلات. Okay. Yes, good point. Good point. So I think that you're right, and I think it's right to read as rafa, right? I was reading as بحسن العبارة ورفع الاحتمالات وبيان المجملات, but it should be إيضاح المشكلات ورفع الاحتمالات وبيان المجملات, right? So that changes everything, or, almost changes everything. So that's going to mean, or by clarification. So it's not connected to what's before. It's connected. The clarification, and limited ambiguity, and explain that clear. So obviously I've messed up the sentence now, but that can be repaired. Barakallahu feek. Maybe words that repay our scrutiny. What do you think that pertains to? Mushkilat. Mushkilat as words that are possible contentions. No, I don't think so. Mushkilat is just something which is very... I usually, in sort of ordinary speech, I would say tricky points, right? They're tricky. Contentions would be things like shubuhat and so on. Mushkilat is just that there are some ayat of the Quran that require a lot of effort to understand their meaning, or how the wording connects to the meaning, which has to be understood contextually, or this is what we call ishkal in the Quran. Doubts as ihtimal. It could pertain to doubts, but it's rather just that things which are ambiguous, right? Raf'ul ihtimal, that's it. So that we know what is the right understanding here, and removing other ways that your mind might go. ihtimalat.
الفائدة الرابعة: تحقيق أقوال المفسرين والتفرقة بين السقيم منها والصحيح وتمييز الراجح من المرجوح. وذلك أن أقوال الناس على مراتب، فمنها الصحيح الذي يعول عليه، ومنها الباطل الذي لا يلتفت إليه، ومنها ما يحتمل الصحة والفساد، ثم إن هذا الاحتمال قد يكون متساويا أو متفاوتا، والتفاوت قد يكون قليلا أو كثيرا.
Right, so he says here تحقيق أقوال المفسرين والتفرقة بين السقيم منها والصحيح. So saying verification of both the defective and sound is kind of strange, right? So it's distinguishing the defective from the sound, not verifying both of them. Distinguishing the view, which is weightier. Okay, this is tamyiz, they've said, for distinguishing, but tafriqa also is distinguishing. تمييز الراجح من المرجوح, weightier from that which is of less consequence. It could work, but it's not. It's kind of strange way of talking about rajih and marjuh. Stronger from weaker, preponderant is a fancy word for rajih, versus non-preponderant views. That is because people's statements, and again, the people is not just people like what are people saying on Instagram, right? We're not concerned about that. أقوال الناس, and nas here is a specific nas, al-mufassirin. Even if some of them are saying batil, right? On occasion. فمنها الصحيح الذي يعول عليه والباطل الذي لا يلتفت إليه. And that which may be thought either authentic or corrupt. ما يحتمل الصحة والفساد. فمن هذا الاحتمال قد يكون متساوٍ أو متفاوتًا. Okay, so that which is, you know, is somewhere in between the two matters of certainty, right? It's not definitely clearly right and not definitely clearly wrong, but there's something in between. Could be right, could be wrong, and it could be much more to this side of being right or much more to this side of being wrong. And the difference between these, some statements can be much more right, or they can be close in their level of certainty, right? So under a particular ayah, there could be a number of opinions, and it might be that just one of them is even worth considering. And it could be that several of them are worth considering, but one of them is much better, or one of them is slightly better than the others, because there's a bunch of evidence for either view. So then he talks about how he categorizes these when he is mentioning the opinions of the Mufassirin. So he will use certain words to describe them.
وإني جعلت لهذه الأقسام عبارات مختلفة يعرف بها مرتبة كل قول، فأدناها ما أصرح بأنه خطأ أو باطل، ثم ما أقول فيه إنه ضعيف أو بعيد، ثم ما أقول إن غيره أرجح منه أو أقوى أو أظهر أو أشهر، ثم ما أقدم غيره عليه إشعارا بترجيح المتقدم، أو ما أقول فيه قيل كذا قصدا للخروج عن عهدته.
Okay, so let's cover this quickly. The least of them, so the lowest level, okay, is that which I say this is error. بأنه خطأ أو باطل. There's mistake or false. Right. I make clear that it is. Okay, so make clear is okay, but we want to say I state, right, explicitly. ثم ما أقول فيه إنه ضعيف أو بعيد. Okay, remote. I tend to say for بعيد, far-fetched or unlikely. Then there's one which I say that other than it is weightier than it. Okay, that is English. It just needs a bit of maybe smoothing, or stronger, or more obvious. أظهر. That's okay. Or more well-known. أشهر. That's fine. ثم ما أقدم غيره عليه. Then there's that which I give other than it precedence in the order of mention. Yes, that's what he's saying. So you can just say that I mentioned before it, or I mentioned other things before it. Making it known. So not making it known exactly. He says here, إشعارا بترجيح المتقدم, right? So to imply. So he's telling you that he does intend to imply that, but at the same time, he's saying it's different from saying it outright. That the one preceded, that the one that preceded is weightier, not the one preceded is weightier. And then قيل, okay, ما أقدم غيره عليه إشعار أو ما أقول فيه قيل كذا قصدا للخروج عن عهدته. So it seems that, especially in this print, that this point is within the preceding one. ثم, and then he's got أو. Is this one the same as that one? That would be the question. قيل كذا قصدا للخروج عن عهدته. I'm inclined to see that as a separate point. So I'll leave it how it is in the translation for now. I'm intended to get out of responsibility for it. I mean, that's kind of what he's saying, yeah. As for when I declare the name of the one who has made the statement, then I do that for one of two reasons.
وأما إذا صرحت باسم قائل القول فإني أفعل ذلك لأحد أمرين، إما للخروج عن عهدته وإما لنصرته إذا كان قائله ممن يقتدى به.
So there's two possible reasons, and they're almost opposed, okay? So you have to just see from the context which one is his intention. Either to get out of responsibility for it. Now we need to you know, we need to just look at how to express this. It's almost like to wash his hands of it, and that is to say, it's not my view, but you know, it is the view of somebody, and this is the person who said it, and you know, feel free to investigate further what he said, or to support it if the one who makes the statement is one whom people follow, not one whom people follow, but one who should be followed, as the point. And yuqtada bihi. So that's like an appeal to authority, right? Because it's a strong opinion, he wants to indicate his strength by saying, well, this was actually Ibn Abbas who said this, for example. However, his practice is not to mention the people, the individuals very often, like the tabi'een and atba' tabi'een, their mufassirin and so on. Why?
على أني لا أنسب الأقوال إلى أصحابها إلا قليلا، وذلك لقلة صحة إسنادها إليهم أو لاختلاف الناقلين في نسبتها إليهم. وأما إذا ذكرت شيئا دون حكاية قوله عن أحد فذلك إشارة إلى أني أتقلده وأرتضيه، سواء كان من تلقاء نفسي أو مما أختاره من كلام غيري. وإذا كان القول في غاية السقوط والبطلان لم أذكره تنزيها للكتاب، وربما ذكرته تحذيرا منه.
Okay, so there's a few aspects. He's been very clear in his approach. He might ascribe the thing to the person, but most of the time he won't do so because, and this is an interesting point about the nature of tafsir works, that you know, you can't be too sure that that particular individual really said that, because there's some issues in the riwayah and so on. And as such, it's not really that important that that particular tabi'i said this opinion, right? He's more looking at it, is the opinion itself worthy of consideration? Most of the time, it's not about who said it, right? That's how I interpret the point that he's getting at here. Sometimes he will just say it without naming anyone, and that's because he's just saying, well, this is my opinion. He may or may not have come up with that himself. If he's just taking what someone has said and just repeating it, this is not what we would consider plagiarism, right? But this is the nature of what I like to call open source tafsir, or so the statements, the good statements in tafsir become public property, right? And they become used by subsequent mufassirin, right? There's some discussion to be had about certain practices which do more resemble plagiarism and maybe could be more open to criticism, anachronistically speaking, in that they might not have been that much open to criticism at the time, but maybe we would be uncomfortable with some of the approaches today, when it's much easier to actually quote and to, you know, to indicate your sources and your references than perhaps in other times and places. But that's a you know, a side discussion perhaps for another time. Then sometimes he would just leave opinions out of the book because it's not worth sullying the pages with it. Occasionally he will mention such things in order to say specifically, like, this is a bad opinion, so be careful. Almost done with the introduction.
وهذا الذي ارتكبته من الترجيح والتصحيح مبني على القواعد العلمية أو على ما تقتضيه اللغة العربية. وسنذكر بعد هذا بابا في موجبات الترجيح بين الأقوال إن شاء الله تعالى.
Now, I think we need some thought about the nature of the أو here, because it says على القواعد العلمية أو على ما تقتضيه اللغة العربية. Now, that's not then something other than قواعد علمية, but it's قواعد علمية لغوية at least, and there may be other قواعد علمية that he's pointing to here. So the أو is something like saying, based upon principles of knowledge, you know, scientific principles, and perhaps amongst that, you know, or most prominently, or sometimes only, exclusively, what can be indicated by language, right? So in English, just using the or might be fine. Is either based on principle of knowledge or on that which the Arabic language requires. You see, the question would be whether to keep the either or not, okay? Because that makes it sound like two distinct things. We'll mention after this a chapter on the necessities of weighing different statements if Allah wills. You're asking, could it be عطف الخاص على العام? Yeah, it could be. It could be. But he's used أو. So it's that the kind of عطف is not what we would usually do. عطف الخاص على العام. That's maybe the reason why that's not clear. وسنذكر بعد هذا بابا في موجبات الترجيح. Okay, that's an interesting part that we're going to come to. Then we'll just say, we'll put a footnote for where that chapter is. Because I can't remember offhand. We've named it التسهيل لعلوم التنزيل, the facilitator of the knowledge of revelation. Okay. Might come up with a nicer way of saying that. I've written 2 introductions at the beginning of it, one of them in useful chapters and comprehensive universal principles. So it's not in useful, but concerning. So fi, here is like about. Abwab al-nafi'a is maybe not, chapters is fine usually for abwab, but here he means concerning beneficial inquiries is kind of what he's getting at. And comprehensive universal principles, and the other on vocabulary, which is oft used. So that's al-muqaddimatu thaniya, which is generally called al-lughat. وأنا أرغب إلى الله العظيم.
وهذا الكتاب كتاب التسهيل لعلوم التنزيل، وقدمت في أوله مقدمتين، إحداهما في أبواب نافعة وقواعد كلية جامعة، والأخرى فيما كثر دوره من اللغات الواقعة في القرآن. وأنا أرغب إلى الله العظيم الكريم أن يجعل تصنيف هذا الكتاب عملا مبرورا وسعيا مشكورا ووسيلة توصلني إلى جنات النعيم وتنقذني من عذاب الجحيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم.
اللهم آمين. We should always read the introductions provided by authors of their books, as a number of my teachers would say to me things like this, that whoever doesn't read the introduction has done dhulm against the author. And also we should take the time to do dua for the author every time we benefit from his work, to ask Allah to accept his effort and to accept ours and to gather us with him and them in the gardens of paradise. And inshallah we'll stop here and continue tomorrow with the first introduction. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.